She was an attractive single mom looking for Mr. Right.
She wanted to be in a real relationship just like any other human being.
He promised to fulfill her every fantasy.
He talked about doing things in the bedroom that simply cannot be repeated, but that's what appealed to her.
But just as their passions reached stratospheric heights, tragedy struck.
She said, Mommy's dead. Something happened to Mama.
There was blood all over the bed. There was blood spatter on the wall.
The ensuing investigation would expose a closet full of dirty laundry and a secret so incendiary, some wondered if this murder was justified.
Past week, I've been a dead man walking. How could she possibly do this to somebody?
The whole country ended up chiming in. Everybody was divided.
It was so heartbreaking to hear national radio personalities say, I would have done the same thing too.
Why me? Why me?
She should have told it from the beginning. I think the driving force in his action was revenge.
September 6, 2012. It's a warm fall afternoon in the historic Dallas neighborhood of Oak Cliff. Two young siblings are walking home from school, but they have no idea the horror that's waiting for them.
They came home from school just like they did every day. They walk through the door and they're calling their mother.
Mom, where are you?
And she doesn't answer.
Opening the bedroom door, they are greeted by a horrifying sight.
When the children saw their mother lying down, they walk over to her and they notice that there was blood on her neck.
They immediately started screaming and crying, so they ran to the neighbor's house.
Moments later, Dallas emergency dispatchers receive a call.
Dallas 323. Come back here, something is wrong. What is wrong? Ma'am, I just know my neighbor kids just came home and found their mother on the floor laying down in a pool of blood.
First responders rush into the bedroom, but sadly, it's much too late. The woman, 28-year-old Cecily Bolden, is already dead. It's clear to EMTs this is no accident.
181. We have a stabbing. DOA. Start homicide unit, please.
Cecily Bolden died from 2 stab wounds to the neck. There was 1 stab wound that severed her carotid artery.
She sat there and actually drowned in her own blood.
As news of the tragedy rips through the apartment complex, it seems impossible to believe that someone would want to brutally murder this beautiful young mother of 2.
I just didn't know what to think at the time. I was upset, I was frustrated.
But as the investigation into Cecily's death unfolds, it becomes clear that she harbored a deep secret, one that may have cost her her life. Born in 1984 and raised by 2 hardworking parents, Cecily Bolden demonstrated a fiercely independent streak from an early age.
Cecily was very much headstrong, firecracker, stood on her own ground, did what she wanted to do. She was very much so interested in living life her way.
After high school, Cecily became a certified nursing assistant in Dallas. But friends and family said her true passion lay elsewhere.
She really wanted to be a hairdresser, because that's all she ever did was hair, braiding.
She was always braiding hair for her friends and her friends' kids. She ultimately wanted to open her own beauty salon.
But Cecily's dream took a backseat to reality when at 19, she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl named Bethany. While her relationship with Bethany's father didn't last, Cecily soon found someone to take his place. A charismatic Dallas DJ named Jeff Busby.
In the city, they know him as DJ Frost.
Yeah, we started out being really flirty with each other. It took off from there. We started dating and hanging out a lot.
Despite an 11-year age difference, 22-year-old Cecily and 33-year-old Jeff wasted no time moving in together. It wasn't long before the couple welcomed another child into the world, son Gerald. It was in motherhood that Cecily found her true calling.
She was very devoted to her children and making sure that her children had the best life that she could possibly offer them.
Cecily's driving force was her children, period. And she loved kids and kids loved her.
But after 2 years together, Cecily and Jeff realized their relationship wasn't built for the long haul.
We just didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. We just chose to go in different directions, but we stayed cool with each other.
For a woman blessed with a fiery personality and a knockout body, Cecily had no trouble hopping back into the Dallas dating scene.
It's hot, she was all that. My sister was thick, you know, she had the booty, you know, everything that guys like.
Cecily might have had her pick of potential boyfriends, but over the next few years, she kissed her fair share of frogs. By the time she turned 28, Cecily still hadn't found her Prince Charming.
Cecily did go through a rough patch. We live in the real world. And no, her choices always weren't the best.
A couple of the guys she dated were a little questionable. I wasn't too fond of course, and didn't want around the kids.
Worst of all, some of Cecily's boyfriends were allegedly violent with her.
There were several domestic violence cases against her ex-boyfriends.
She had been abused in the past, so she definitely had some things to be concerned about.
But through it all, Cecily never gave up hope on finding true love.
She was really looking for someone to love her and to offer her probably what she envisioned as, you know, the very best relationship that she could have.
Those dreams seemed to finally come true in August of 2012, when Cecily met 36-year-old Larry Dunn in an online chat room.
It was pretty innocent. You know, they started flirting, and then one thing kind of led to another.
I think that she just was seeking love and attention, and he was willing to shower her with that.
A charismatic and successful furniture mover in Dallas, it didn't take long for Larry to sweep Cecily off her feet.
There was definitely an attraction there, and it wasn't long before things moved from the virtual world to the real world.
Unlike some of the other men Cecily had recently dated, Larry treated her and her kids with warmth and tenderness.
She felt that he loved her, that he wanted to help her take care of the children, that he really wanted to be in a committed relationship with her.
Though they had only known each other for a few weeks, their physical chemistry was undeniable.
Their relationship turned sexual just like that. It was hot, it was sexy, it was intense, and they fulfilled each other's every desire.
But just when it seemed their love for one another had never burned brighter, tragedy struck. As investigators arrive at Cecily's apartment, their first objective is to secure the crime scene. Second, they are faced with the terrible task of speaking with Cecily's children about their gruesome discovery.
Aside from losing their mother and the tragedy of that, they walked in and saw their mother lying dead in a pool of blood. I mean, that's horribly traumatic for a child.
But the burning question on everyone's mind is who could have murdered this mother of two in cold blood? "28-year-old single mother Cecily Bolden dreamed of being in a committed, loving relationship. After years of heartache and disappointment, her love life took an uplifting turn when she met 36-year-old furniture mover Larry Dunn.
Larry appeared to embody everything that Cecily was looking for: love, devotion, companionship.
But Cecily and Larry's love connection was severed on September 6, 2012, when she was found stabbed to death inside her Dallas apartment.
Was this a robbery? Could this have been someone she knew? Who could have done this to her?
And while there's no sign of the murder weapon, the cause of death is clear.
What led to Cecily Bolden's death was a stab wound to the carotid artery, and she pretty much just bled out.
There was a lot of blood on the bed. There was some blood spatter on the wall. It was a fatal blow right away, basically.
As investigators continue processing the gruesome scene, news of Cecily's death reaches friends and family.
I got the phone call from the kids, and they were hysterical. They were crying and screaming, And I asked what's going on, and she told me Mommy's dead. Something happened to Mama.
My little cousin told me that someone done killed your sister, and I'm like, what? I'm like, Dad, don't come over here playing like that. You know, he's like, nah, man, I'm for real, your sister dead.
Grieving friends and family, along with Cecily's 2 children, gather outside her apartment. Everyone, including police, is desperate for answers. But at this point, investigators can only speculate as to a possible motive.
I didn't know what to think. Maybe somebody broke in, somebody done jumped on her.
Interviewing neighbors, it's a theory that quickly gains traction.
Someone had broken into her house 2 days prior to the murder. So the speculation was whomever broke into the house had returned to finish the job.
Was it possible the same individual had violently attacked Cecily in some sort of robbery gone wrong? Speaking to neighbors, investigators discover that Cecily had a reputation in the community for keeping cash inside her apartment, which gives the deadly robbery theory even more traction.
Cecily sold candy and snacks from her apartment just to raise a little extra money. She may have had large sums of money at her apartment.
Everyone knew that Cecily Bolden was the candy lady of the neighborhood. That's a potential motive.
People is struggling out here. And in this city, your door will get kicked down if they feel like you making money like that.
But as detectives scour the scene, they soon realize there's a problem with the robbery theory.
There was no broken windows, the door wasn't kicked in.
Nothing stolen, not a dime took. Had every penny that was in her candy jar, had every dollar. No, it wasn't no robbery.
But if robbery isn't the motive, then investigators are presented with an even more chilling possibility that Cecily knew her attacker.
It seemed like she knew her attacker because the way she was found. Nothing with a t-shirt on. It's like she was prepared for someone.
Half naked, on the floor, no forced entry. But yeah, she knew whoever was in there. Real good.
Working from the assumption that Cecily knew her attacker, police dig into her personal records for clues.
Police started looking into her cell phone, text messages, and they came across the name Larry Dunn.
Police track down Larry and ask him to come to the station for an interview.
Like I told you over the phone and in person, there's been an incident, and that's why I wanted to talk to you, okay? But
what is this?
It's then that investigators break the news about Cecily's murder.
She was found dead in her apartment, and we're working out.
Oh, God.
You know, we're treating it as a murder right now.
Oh, God.
He was definitely upset by the news.
And while Larry freely admits he and Cecily's romance was red hot, he claims their passion never boiled over into physical violence.
And y'all never gotten into any kind of arguments or fights or?
No, I mean, argument and fight for what?
Larry is adamant that he's innocent of any crime and insists that he was nowhere near Cecily's house at the time of the murder. Detectives are still suspicious. They run a background check on Larry, but find nothing that indicates he is capable of physical violence.
He'd been arrested for a few minor misdemeanors, nothing serious, and especially nothing violent.
It takes a really cold-hearted individual to stab to death a mother of 2 children. It just didn't seem like somebody that would just go out and murder a person.
In addition, the physical evidence doesn't seem to tie Larry to the scene in any way.
There were a lot of pictures taken of Larry Dunn. He didn't have any cuts on his hands, anything like that.
Larry is tentatively cleared of any wrongdoing. Still searching for Cecily's killer, investigators turn to a friend of Cecily's named LaToya Arnett.
They found LaToya Arnett, the person who made the 911 call, and they brought her down to the station to give a statement.
It's a move that quickly pays dividends. LaToya tells police that approximately 3 hours before Cecily's body was discovered, she saw an unknown man enter Cecily's apartment.
It was a black male I never seen before.
Describe him to me.
He was probably about
Black
five.
male?
Black man. He was probably about 5'6".
Whether the man knew Cecily was unclear to LaToya, but she claims he obviously felt comfortable enough to enter the apartment unannounced.
He just walked in. He twisted the doorknob and walked in. And I felt like that was kind of strange.
Detectives can't help but wonder if this mystery man might have been Cecily's boyfriend, Larry Dunn.
You ever heard the name Larry?
My cousin told me, Cecily said that she started talking to somebody named Larry.
Okay. But you
That's
never
the
met him?
I never met him.
Was it Larry Dunn that LaToya Arnett saw entering Cecily's apartment the morning of the murder? Detectives create a photo lineup to see if LaToya recognizes Larry as the mystery man.
Is this the person you saw walk into Cecily's apartment today?
Oh, no, ma'am.
With LaToya unable to identify Larry Dunn as the mystery man, detectives move on to another potential suspect, Cecily's ex-boyfriend, Jeff Busby.
They had a long history. They had a roller coaster relationship. Could he have been jealous? Could he have acted in a fit of rage? It's possible.
Possible, but according to investigators, not likely.
Jeff Busby's alibi checked out. Jeff and Cecily were on good terms. It became pretty clear to police investigators. Jeff Busby did not commit this crime.
We remained close. That was one of my best friends.
But digging further into Cecily's romantic background, investigators discover that in between dating Jeff Busby and Larry Dunn, Cecily was involved with several other men. And more than one of these relationships raises serious red flags.
She filed domestic violence charges for violence against herself and her children.
For detectives, it's a stunning turn of events. Could one of these former flames have found out about Cecily and Larry's red-hot romance and flew into a jealous rage? As police begin peeling back the layers of Cecily's life, they have no idea the skeletons they are about to uncover. It's been 6 hours since 28-year-old Dallas resident Cecily Bolden was found stabbed to death inside her apartment. After dismissing robbery as a motive, investigators shifted their focus to Cecily's new love interest, 36-year-old Larry Dunn. But with no evidence connecting Larry to the crime, investigators are at a loss. And with cops still on the lookout for a mystery man seen entering Cecily's apartment shortly before her death, time is of the essence.
And we need to find out who this person is.
Desperate for a lead, investigators decide to shine a spotlight on Cecily's roller coaster love life.
Detectives ran a background check on Cecily and learned that there were several domestic violence cases against her ex-boyfriends.
I don't know if it was that the pickings were slim, but Cecily sometimes didn't make the very best choices in men.
When detectives start investigating the former men in Cecily's life, they uncover a slew of potential suspects.
Police investigators looked at Cecily's ex-boyfriends, several whom had a violent history with her.
But one of Cecily's violent ex-boyfriends stands out above the rest.
He was fighting on her. He used to hit her. That's just the kind of guy he was. He was fighting on women all the time.
The man's name is Rex, and apparently, Rex's rage wasn't reserved solely for Cecily. Her friends recount an incident that took place in 2006, involving her beloved 2-year-old son, Gerald.
Her boyfriend was watching him one day while she was at work, and we got a call from the hospital. The doctor said that he'd been punched and kicked.
When Cecily saw what happened, she was devastated. She was really devastated.
Cecily never forgave Rex for hurting her son and soon ended their relationship. In light of their volatile history, police can't help but wonder if Rex might have dropped by Cecily's apartment unannounced, which in turn triggered a violent confrontation.
Nothing sets a mother off quicker than someone trying to abuse her child. So if one of her exes did show up, Cecily may have become enraged.
But no sooner do investigators think they have a promising new lead than they hit a brick wall. Pulling the ex-couple's case file, they learn Rex is currently serving time on charges related to the child abuse incident against Cecily's son.
He ended up finally getting caught and he got sentenced to like 20 years, 20 to 25 years.
It's a disappointing setback. But Rex is not the only ex-boyfriend whose violent past raises eyebrows. Detectives come across another man from Cecily's past. Michael Walker, a man who was even more despised by Cecily's family than Rex.
If he ain't in jail, he need to be in jail. Praise God for him that I haven't seen him. Little leprechaun-looking mother.
What you mean I need to back up?
You're not coming in here. You need to back up.
I damn near take care of all the bills in this house. What you mean I need to back up?
You don't take care of nothing.
What you mean?
No, you are not coming in here. No. You need to leave.
That he had been abusive toward her in the past. He had broken her car window.
Cecily's family claims the abuse escalated after she broke up with Michael in early 2011, just months before her murder.
Bye. Cecily, what?
He was mad, he harassed and threatened her, he kicked her vehicle, and he told her, "You better invest in some protection."
Had Michael Walker followed through on his threat and killed Cecily in a jealous rage?
Sometimes people can't accept when an ex has moved on. The jealousy of a former lover can take someone who is otherwise perfectly rational and make them snap.
Police put out an APB on Michael Walker, then once again turned to the one person who might help them tie Michael to the scene once and for all. Cecily's neighbor, LaToya Arnett.
She told police she saw a man walking into Cecily's apartment the day of the murder.
Could Michael Walker be the mystery intruder LaToya saw on that fateful day? Or is there another, even more dangerous man in Cecily's life? One who wouldn't stop until Cecily was dead. After enduring years of abusive relationships, Cecily Bolden finally felt she turned a corner when she met Larry Dunn online. For the single mother of two, Larry represented a chance at true happiness. But after Cecily's discovered dead in her own apartment, police find themselves staring at a rogues gallery of volatile ex-boyfriends, any one of whom could have killed Cecily.
A couple of the guys she dated were a little questionable, but I mean, I was questionable too, so I can't, pass judgment on nobody.
But after learning about a series of disturbing events that took place the year before, police have their sights set on one man, an old flame of Cecily's named Michael Walker.
Michael had allegedly threatened Cecily Bolden by leaving harassing messages and allegedly threatening her life. So he was a prime suspect.
But with Michael Walker's whereabouts unknown, detectives have no choice but to turn to their next best option, Cecily's neighbor, LaToya Arnett. In her initial statement, LaToya claimed to have witnessed an unknown black male entering Cecily's apartment just a few hours before the murder. If their hunch is correct, the man LaToya saw that day was Michael Walker.
Have you ever heard Celia talk about an ex-boyfriend?
Michael?
Yes.
It wasn't him. I know how he looked.
Without a doubt, it was not him.
Not Michael.
But if the man LaToya saw that day wasn't Michael Walker, then who was it? The only other person of interest that even remotely fits LaToya's description is Larry Dunn. But after their initial interview with Larry, detectives all but ruled him out as a suspect. With no other leads, detectives circle back to Larry Dunn, if only to make doubly sure of his innocence. However, when they arrive at Larry's residence, they make a startling discovery.
Yes, is Larry here?
Larry Dunn was a married man. He had 2 kids.
Here to talk to you about Cecily Bolden.
Who is Cecily?
The fact that Larry Dunn was married at the time adds a whole new layer of complication to this case. It could have been that Larry's wife, catching wind of the affair, decided herself to go after Cecily.
But judging from her reaction, Larry's wife had no idea her husband was carrying on an affair with Cecily Bolden.
Now, did you know her, ma'am? Do you even know who we're talking about? Or
I have
is this...
no idea. This is the first time I'm hearing about this.
Ooh.
I've been at home raising kids.
She was absolutely shocked. It was clear she had no idea. So if she had no idea, she had no reason to murder Cecily.
Why don't we go down to the office and talk about it if you have no problems with it?
Look, if it helps, I'll go.
His wife might not have had a motive to murder Cecily, But that doesn't get Larry off the hook for possible murder. Back at the station, Larry quickly confesses to one thing. This wasn't the first time he cheated on his wife.
It was pretty common for Larry to cheat on his wife. Larry would meet women on chat lines and they would exchange phone numbers.
You got 5, 6, 7 women that you dealing with.
It seems Cecily wasn't the love of Larry's life so much as his latest sexual conquest.
He wasn't looking for a relationship. He wasn't looking to leave his wife. He just wanted to have extramarital sex. So she thought she was hooking up with somebody that was single. She had no idea he was married. He never told her.
Me and Cecily, I was around on my wife.
So y'all been having sex for 2 weeks, 3 weeks? What?
We had sex like 3 times.
While Larry comes clean about his infidelity, he maintains he had nothing to do with Cecily's murder. Though Larry does admit that he did have sex with Cecily the morning of the crime.
I called her like, look, I want to come through, I want some. She's like, come on, I went over to her.
He said he went there, they had sex, and he left. When he left, she was fine. She said bye, he said bye, and he left.
Larry is so adamant about his innocence, he volunteers to let investigators search his car. But when CSIs examine Larry's vehicle, they make a surprising discovery.
Luminol is a substance where you can spray it on blood and it will illuminate it. So that's what they sprayed in the car. And so at that point, they saw that there was quite a bit of blood in there.
Larry's story changed from, I just had sex with her, I don't know anything about a murder, to she killed me, so I killed her.
But what does Larry mean by that cryptic comment? Detectives can hardly believe what Larry says next.
He said that he had killed her because he was in a rage over finding out that she was HIV positive.
He was pretty adamant that he was the victim in this case. There were multiple things going on in his mind, and he blamed her for all of that.
According to Larry, Cecily had failed to disclose that she was HIV positive prior to having sex with him the first time.
For the past week, I've been a dead man walking, and all I could think about was her. And why and how could she possibly do this to somebody?
Right.
Like, why? Why me? You know, why me? And I was hurt, and my mind was going 1,000,000 miles a second all day since she told me. Every day since she told me.
Adding to Larry's anger was the health risk Cecily's HIV posed for his wife.
Having HIV would have been devastating for him because at that point he's possibly passed it along to his wife.
It seemed as if Larry Dunn had lost it all. He had potentially lost his family. He was potentially going to die from HIV.
I think within the African American community, there is still some stigma surrounding a person being HIV positive. Along with stigma comes isolation, fear, and views of hatred.
Certain he was carrying the HIV virus, Larry thought he might as well enjoy his time with Cecily while he could.
We had already had sex like 4 times.
So you didn't think one more was gonna matter?
Why would it? 4 times. Unprotected with a chick with HIV.
According to Larry, it was after this 4th and final sexual encounter that his anger at Cecily turned to rage.
He said that she began talking about having HIV and she was acting like it wasn't a big deal. He says that just sent him into a rage.
I just lost it, man.
And what did you do?
I went in the kitchen and I got a steak knife.
Did she see the knife in your hand?
No, she didn't see it until it was in her throat.
He wanted her to feel pain, so he stabbed her in her throat and chest area.
The manner of the attack was very brutal. The one who actually killed her is the one that was in her carotid artery.
Larry washed up before he left. He also burned his clothes and he threw the knife in the dumpster.
Based on Larry's confession, detectives are able to locate the murder weapon. They also charge Larry with the murder of Cecily Bolden. But even with Larry in custody, plenty of questions still remain. not the least of which is whether Larry's actions constituted self-defense.
If she had HIV and she didn't tell him until after the fact, was he justified? After all, this is Texas. And in the court of law, when it comes to defending yourself, anything is possible.
When 28-year-old Cecily Bolden began a heated relationship with Larry Dunn, she thought she'd finally met the man of her dreams. But after a few short weeks, that dream turned into a nightmare when Cecily's children discovered her body in the bedroom of their apartment. After investigating a virtual laundry list of potential suspects, detectives ultimately discovered that not only was Cecily's new boyfriend behind the crime, he was also a married man.
Well, I don't think that she had any idea that he was married.
He had led this double life. He was sleeping around on his wife and successfully doing so for a while.
But perhaps the most shocking aspect of the case was Larry's alleged motive for murdering Cecily.
She knew that she was HIV positive, but she did not initially tell him. I think he felt disrespected and hurt by that. And so it just triggered something in his mind, and he decided that he was going to kill her.
And things only got worse when Cecily allegedly made light of the situation, which pushed Larry over the edge.
It's not that bad.
So you just gonna give me HIV, endanger my life, and pretend like it's okay?
Larry Dunn trusted Cecily Bolden. He had been intimate with her. So perhaps he was feeling betrayed or confused, could not get past what he believed she had done to him.
But as the tawdry details of the case go viral, a surprising number of people come out in support of Larry's actions.
The whole country ended up chiming in on it. A lot of people were like, I would have did the same thing. And then you had the other side of the country, and they're like, you know, nobody should have to die.
It initially was portrayed more as he'd found out that she had HIV and he killed her right then. That's a different scenario than what we had. He knew that she had HIV. It was a week later after that that the murder happened. She didn't tell Larry Dunn initially because she just wanted love and acceptance. While she did something wrong, clearly, that doesn't mean that he was justified in killing her.
Then, just weeks before Larry's murder trial is set to begin, a shocking development adds another, even more bizarre twist to the case.
He does not have HIV. He didn't get tested before killing her. He got tested 3 times while he was waiting for trial. They were all negative.
It's under this cloud of scandal and uncertainty that the state versus Larry Dunn gets underway. And despite the fact that Larry isn't HIV positive, many in the courtroom believe his self-defense claim will still win out.
You want to think it was an open shut case because, yeah, the guy confessed to stabbing her. But when you have to throw in that HIV, you're going to have an uphill battle.
Larry Dunn believed that he was justified in killing Cecily Bolden, and he thought that the jurors would agree with him.
From the prosecution's opening statement, their objective is clear: to minimize any sympathy jurors might feel for Larry Dunn.
The strategy was to focus on Larry Dunn's actions, that he was the cheating husband because he would sleep with women without using a condom and then come back and sleep with his wife.
Prosecutors assert that on September 6, 2012, more than a week after learning that Cecily was HIV positive, Larry drove to her home to have unprotected sex with her one last time. On the presumption that he too had contracted the disease, Larry entered Cecily's bedroom, hell-bent on revenge.
I think it was a premeditated attack. He knew exactly what he was doing. He laid down beside her and just stuck the knife right into her neck.
He could have taken steps to get help, to get information about HIV, to find out whether he actually had the virus. But he didn't do that. He went straight to rage.
Prosecutors also cite the physical evidence that ties Larry to the crime scene: the recovered murder weapon, his bloody car, and last but not least, his own confession.
How many times did you stab her?
Twice. I think, twice. Whatever's gonna happen really doesn't matter to me, man, because again, in my mind, I'm already dead, bro. I feel like she killed me, so I killed her.
Leaving Larry's own ominous words in the minds of the jury, the prosecution rests its case. But as defense attorneys prepare to call their first witness, an unexpected turn of events rocks the courtroom.
It's very unusual that that would happen. I really didn't think that he would do that.
Inside a Dallas courtroom, Larry Dunn is on trial for the murder of his 28-year-old mistress, Cecily Bolden. Prosecutors have alleged that this self-confessed philanderer intentionally stabbed Cecily to death a week after learning she had exposed him to the HIV virus.
They'd had sex a number of times, and then she decided to tell him. He went over there for revenge, had sex with her again, and killed her.
With prosecutors finished laying out their case, it's now Larry's attorney's turn to launch their defense. But before they even call their first witness, the case veers in an unexpected direction.
He told his defense attorney that he wanted to enter the guilty plea, and I was very surprised by that.
The community was shocked when Larry Dunn entered his guilty plea.
But even after entering a guilty plea, neither Larry nor his attorney is ready to throw in the towel. Their new plan is to establish sympathy for Larry at a different proceeding, his sentencing hearing.
The defense attorney basically didn't want to get up there and argue that he was not guilty when it was so clear that he was. He wanted to save the ammunition that he had to try to get him the lowest sentence he possibly could.
This ammunition takes the form of a legal doctrine known in Texas as the sudden passion defense.
The defendant must prove that he caused the death under the immediate influence of sudden passion. It reduces the offense to a second-degree felony offense.
Normally, the punishment range is 5 years in prison to 99 years in prison. If the jury makes a finding of sudden passion, then it is reduced from 2 years to 20 years.
At question is how much spontaneity, if any, governed Larry's impulse to kill.
You have to be caught in the moment. Sudden passion definitely has a time element. It can't be the result of former provocation.
Taking the stand on his own behalf, Larry reiterates what he told detectives during his confession a year earlier.
He in fact says himself, killing her wasn't on the menu, that's just how it ended up.
He says the more she talked about living with HIV and that it wasn't that bad, the angrier he got.
It's powerful testimony, but according to prosecutors, it doesn't amount to sudden impulse.
Now, this wasn't a sudden passion issue because Larry Dunn had days to reflect on the fact that he had been exposed to HIV. And after he knew that, he went back, had sex with her again, and then decided to kill her.
For prosecutors, there's no better evidence of premeditation than a series of text messages that Cecily and Larry exchanged the days leading up to her murder.
He'd sent her 300 text messages in which they'd kept talking the whole time, including talking about her HIV status. He sent a lot of very graphic sexual text messages. His reaction was, I'm upset, I'm hurt, but it's okay, we'll be together.
According to prosecutors, these text messages prove without a doubt that Larry had been plotting Cecily's murder for days. The argument seems valid, but will the jury go along with it?
There was one juror who did not want to sentence Larry Dunn. We learned that he had an issue with Cecily Bolden, that he felt that Cecily Bolden had disrespected Larry Dunn.
They sent out a note saying that they were hung, and the judge, instead of declaring a mistrial, sent them back to continue deliberating.
On November 5th, 2013, jurors finally reach a unanimous decision. They sentenced Larry Dunn to 40 years in prison.
The jury found that Larry Dunn had not acted in sudden passion. Had they done so, it would have reduced his sentence significantly.
My immediate reaction to what he got is good. Larry Dunn received 40 years. All right. Of course, he'll be an old fart when he get out.
Is 40 years enough for what he did? No. I mean, I'd have to ask my kids that. They'd probably say no.
And as the years go by, the death of Cecily Bolden has become a cautionary tale about ignorance and prejudice, a tragedy rooted in a lack of awareness about HIV.
I felt like she killed me, so I killed her.
Cecily Bolden was not killed because she was HIV positive. She was killed based on the miseducation and stigma that Larry had about the disease.
I feel like after she told you, you had choices, bro. I mean, after you found out, you had multiple choices. You had to kill her.
If Larry Dunn had felt like Sister Bolden gave him HIV, he could have followed her with the local authorities.
Though nothing can bring Cecily back, it's her loved one's hope that her life will serve as both an inspiration to others living with the disease and as an example of just how deadly ignorance can be.
I want to make sure that the story doesn't go into the distance, that we are active as a community in educating people about HIV, making sure that people know that HIV is not this instant death sentence, is so that those...
The brutal slaughter of her husband admits the truth to save her. Own skin. She traded the father of her son for $50,000 and a clean slate. Kornhart and Mueller are sentenced to life in prison. Karen gets 20 years for cooperating, 20 years for ordering an execution. Sometimes the justice system leaves a bitter taste in your mouth. Danny Coleman did not deserve this. He was an asset to this world. He was blindsided by the person he trusted most, sleeping next to a monster for 19 years. We found the truth. We locked him away. But it does not bring Danny back. It just leaves you staring at the walls, wondering how cold a human heart can truly be. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most foolish reasons you can possibly imagine. You look at a man, a good man, and you think his life has value. But to the person sleeping next to him, his life might just be a price tag waiting to be cashed in. It is a cold reality, but it is the reality I have lived with for a very long time. The night of October 22nd, 1992, started like any other quiet night in Franklin County, Missouri. It is a rural area, mostly farmland, woods, and quiet stretches of road. Just past 9 o'clock at night, a motorist driving along Interstate 44 and Stanton saw a glow in the distance. Fire. He walked through a patch of woods and found a pickup truck fully engulfed in flames in the middle of an isolated field. He found a telephone and called the local fire department. When the firefighters arrived and doused the flames, they found something no one ever wants to find. A body, burned beyond recognition, sitting in the front passenger seat. When you find a vehicle completely destroyed by fire with a human being inside, you start asking questions. Who is this? Why are they here? You start from inside of that burned-out shell, and you work your way out. The fire had destroyed almost everything. There was no wallet, no identification. The license plates had been removed by someone hoping to buy themselves time. It was an obvious attempt to delay law enforcement. But criminals, I tell you, they are rarely as smart as they think they are. They took the plates. But they completely forgot about the vehicle identification number etched right into the steel frame of the truck. You have to be kidding me. That single oversight was a thread that would begin to unravel their entire twisted plot. That number traced back to a home in St. Louis, about a 45-minute drive from that lonely field. It belonged to Danny and Karen Coleman. In the middle of the night, investigators knocked on their door. They found Karen and her 18-year-old son, Joby, awake and allegedly worried sick. Danny had not come home. When detectives showed them what survived the fire, a gold chain, a watch, a ring, and a hunting belt buckle, the tears began to fall. But the final piece of the puzzle was a metal rod found in the right leg of the victim. Joby confirmed his father had a pin in his leg from an old motorcycle accident back in 1971 when he was serving in the military. It was Danny. Let's talk about Danny Coleman. Danny was 38 years old, an Army veteran, a mechanical engineer, and a man who loved the outdoors. He walked with a limp from his military days, but he never let it slow him down. He was a good father, a hard worker who even started a side business treating ceramic floors to make them non-slip to provide a better life for his family. He was the kind of guy who taught children how to handle hunting rifles safely. A decent, honest man. He thought he was living the American dream with his wife of 19 years. He trusted her. That was his fatal mistake. Karen Coleman played the part of the grieving widow perfectly. She told police they were a loving couple. No enemies, no dark secrets. But a murder scene always tells the truth, even when the living lie. The medical examiner, Dr. Mary Case, looked at Danny's remains. The fire was meant to cover up the real crime. Danny had suffered massive blunt force trauma to his skull before the fire was ever set. This was not a tragic accident. This was a brutal, calculated homicide. When you investigate a murder, you always look at the spouse. Love and hate are separated by a very thin line, but initially there were no red flags. Detectives interviewed a close friend of Danny named Rich Saluka. There had been some strange, cryptic phone calls between Rich and the Coleman home the night of the murder. But Rich had a solid alibi. He was just a grieving friend. However, Rich did share something crucial. He noticed that Karen was a much rougher person than Danny. And recently, Danny had quietly mentioned they were having marital issues. You pull on that thread, and the whole sweater comes apart. Investigators dug deeper into Karen's life and found a woman leading a secret, toxic double life. She was addicted to methamphetamines and cocaine. She was a drug dealer, and she was a serial cheater. Danny knew about the drugs, and he hated it. He was a straight, laced guy who did not even drink or smoke, and his wife was running around high, destroying everything he had built. He would have divorced her in a heartbeat if he knew the full extent of her betrayals. But Karen did not want a divorce. A divorce means you split the assets. A murder means you get the life insurance, $50,000. That was the price she put on the father of her child. Karen was a manipulator, empty inside, driven only by greed and her next high. She was sleeping with several men, including the husband of her own best friend, an armed robber named Larry Nolan, who was sitting in a Missouri state prison. My, the betrayal runs so deep, it is almost hard to fathom. She used her visits to the prison to seduce Larry, making him believe she loved him. She promised him $15,000 from the insurance money and her hand in marriage if he could arrange to have her husband killed. Larry, blinded by a foolish fantasy of love, agreed. Larry reached out from behind prison walls and contacted an old friend on the outside, a firefighter from the Stanton area named James Cornhart. James recruited a friend named Stephen Mueller and an unidentified man known only as Dozer. Think about the absolute senselessness of this. These men did not know Danny. They had no grievance with him. They agreed to end a good man's life for a few $1,000s. Karen gave them all the details of Danny's routine. On the night of October 22nd, they lured Danny to a vacant house under the pretense of giving him information about Karen's affairs. Danny went because he wanted the truth about his marriage. Instead, he was ambushed. They beat him viciously. Then, as Stephen Mueller would later confess, they shot him. The medical examiner would later find a lead snowstorm in Danny's skull fragments, the metallic debris left behind by bullets. They loaded his body into his own truck, drove it to that field in Stanton, and James Cornhart, a firefighter, set ablaze. But remember the crime scene. Detectives had found a matchbox wrapped in cellophane near the burned truck. They pulled a single latent fingerprint off that wrapper. They had the print, but they had no name to match it to. The case went cold. Years passed. From 1,992 all the way to 1,999. Karen Coleman lived her life, spending the blood money she collected from her husband's death. She dropped Larry Nolan the moment the deed was done. She never paid him the full amount, and she certainly never married him. But secrets have a way of clawing their way out of the grave. Larry Nolan, dying of hepatitis in prison, felt the bitter sting of Karen's betrayal. Before he took his last breath, he confessed the entire murder plot to his cellmate. He did not confess out of guilt or remorse. He confessed out of pure spite because he had been double-crossed. I tell you, there is absolutely no honor among thieves. That confession reached the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the wheels of justice, though slow, began to grind. It took years of meticulous work to build a case that would hold up in federal court. Finally, in 2008, 16 years after Danny Coleman was murdered in the dark, they arrested James Cornhart at his firehouse. They rolled his fingerprints, and what do you know? They matched the print on that cellophane wrapper from the crime scene perfectly. You have a firefighter committing arson to cover up a murder, and he leaves his fingerprint on the matchbox. Astonishing. Then came the wiretaps. James made calls from the county jail, telling his buddy Stephen Mueller to dispose of the murder weapon and a homemade silencer built from a lawnmower muffler. Stephen threw it off a bridge in South St. Louis County, but when investigators brought him in, the guilt was too heavy. Stephen cracked. He told them everything. He admitted he was the one who pulled the trigger. When they finally slapped the cuffs on Karen Coleman, she did what's selfish. Manipulative people always do. She tried to save her own skin. She turned on everyone, claiming her drug addiction made her do it, saying she wanted a fresh start. She pleaded guilty to conspiracy and murder for hire to avoid spending the rest of her life in a cage. In 2010, James Cornhart and Stephen Mueller were sentenced to life in prison. Karen received 20 years, a light sentence for the architect of such misery. But her son, Joby, finally got to see the people who destroyed his family held accountable. Danny Coleman did not deserve what happened to him. He was a man who loved life, betrayed by the person he trusted most, slaughtered for a fistful of dollars by men who did not even know his name. The third man, Dozer, is still out there somewhere, but the truth is out in the light. Humans will always disappoint you, but the evidence never lies. Human beings are peculiar creatures. I tell you, they murder for the most absurd and petty reasons you can possibly imagine. And in their arrogant delusion, they believe they can outsmart the truth, but the truth is patient. It waits in the ashes for as long as it takes. The year was 1992, October 22nd to be precise, when a motorist traveling along the North Service Road in Stanton, Missouri, noticed an orange glow bleeding into the night sky just past 9 o'clock, which led firefighters to a desolate patch of woods where a pickup truck was fully engulfed in flames. Once they managed to douse the inferno, they found something that instantly changed this from a simple vehicle fire to a nightmare, because sitting in the front passenger seat were the charred remains of a human being. Looking at a scene like that, you realize fire is a thief. It steals evidence. It steals identity, and it leaves behind nothing but questions and skeletal remains. But fire cannot destroy everything if you know where to look. We found a gold chain, a ring, a watch, and a belt buckle belonging to a hunting group called Ducks Unlimited, and deep within the ashes, the medical examiner found a metal rod surgically implanted in the victim's right leg. Whoever orchestrated this atrocity thought they were absolute criminal masterminds because they removed the license plates to delay identification. But you have to be kidding me. They completely forgot about the vehicle identification number etched permanently into the steel frame, which is the kind of amateur oversight that always brings killers down. That number led us on a 45-minute drive to St. Louis, straight to the doorstep of a woman named Karen Coleman and her 18-year-old son, Joby, at 2:30 in the morning. When we showed them the jewelry and mentioned the surgical pen, Karen wept and confirmed our worst fears. The body in the truck was her husband of 19 years, 38-year-old Danny Coleman. Now, let me tell you about Danny, because the victims are the ones who truly matter in this dark business. Danny was a good man, a hard-working mechanical engineer who ran a successful flooring business on the side, an Army veteran who was honorably discharged in 1971 after a severe motorcycle accident left him with a lifelong limp and that metal rod in his leg. He was a straight shooter, a man who taught children gun safety, a man who loved the outdoors, and a man who loved his wife dearly. He met Karen in a military hospital when he was recovering from his accident, and he spent the next 2 decades trying to build a comfortable, honest life for his family, entirely unaware that the woman sleeping next to him was harboring a darkness he could not even begin to comprehend. Karen Coleman was living a deeply sinister double life, a hollow shell of a human being consumed by methamphetamines, cocaine, and chronic infidelity. While Danny was working his hands to the bone to provide for her, she was out betraying him in the most vile ways possible, even sleeping with her best friend's husband, an armed robber named Larry Nolan, who was sitting in the Missouri State Penitentiary. Danny was beginning to suspect things. He hated drugs, he had a strong moral compass, and he was getting close to discovering her sordid secrets, which many had to go. Karen was not about to endure a divorce that would leave her with nothing. No. She wanted his $50,000 life insurance policy. She wanted the money without the man, and her psychology here reveals a profound, chilling narcissism. She viewed Danny not as a husband, but as an obstacle in a paycheck. So she manipulated Larry Nolan during her prison visits, weaponizing his pathetic infatuation with her, promising him marriage and $15,000 if he arranged to have her husband slaughtered. Larry, blinded by his own foolish lust from behind bars, reached out to his friend on the outside, a local firefighter named James Cornhart, who agreed to broker this hit for $17,000, eventually roping in another man named Steve Mueller for $1,200, and a mysterious phantom known only as Dozer. These cowardly individuals lured Danny to a vacant house under the guise of discussing Karen's infidelity, preying on his desperate need to save his marriage. When he arrived, they ambushed him, beating him brutally before executing him with 3 silenced gunshots to the head, a fact later confirmed by the medical examiner, who found a lead snowstorm of bullet fragments in his crushed skull. Then, like the spineless cowards they were, they stuffed Danny into his own truck, drove him to that remote field in Stanton, and set him on fire, hoping to erase their sins. For years, they thought they got away with it. As the calendar turned from 1992 to 1996, and the case grew cold, but Karen made a fatal miscalculation. Once Danny was dead, and she collected her bloody $50,000, she stopped visiting Larry Nolan, dropping him like a bad habit and never paying him a dime. Hell hath no fury like a felon double-crossed. I tell you, by 1999, Larry was dying of hepatitis in prison, and in his bitter, vengeful anger, he made a deathbed confession to his cellmate, laying out the entire conspiracy. It took years to build a trap, but in 2008, federal authorities finally swooped in. They arrested James Cornhart at his firehouse, and the crime lab matched his fingerprints to a discarded matchbook cellophane wrapper found at the crime scene 16 years earlier, proving that evidence never forgets. From jail, Cornhart made a panic phone call to Steve Mueller, begging him to throw a makeshift lawnmower silencer off the Jefferson Barracks Bridge, a call we recorded and used to break Mueller, who confessed to everything. And what did the grieving widow do when the walls finally closed around her? Karen Coleman, the architect of this entire nightmare, flipped on everyone to save her own skin, pleading guilty for a reduced sentence of 20 years. While Cornhart and Mueller received life in prison on June 14, 2010, she blamed the drugs, she blamed her accomplices, showing absolutely zero genuine remorse of the fact that she orchestrated the butchery of the man who gave her everything. Danny Coleman was an asset to this world, a man completely blindsided by the staggering greed and cold-blooded betrayal of his own wife. But in the end, justice caught up to Karen Coleman and her lackeys, proving once again that you can burn the body, you can hide the weapon, and you can lie to the police, but the truth will always rise from the ashes to put you exactly where you belong. Humans are peculiar creatures. They murder for the most ridiculous reasons you can possibly imagine, but usually it boils down to 2 ancient motivations, money and lust. When you combine the two, you get a toxic cocktail that poisons everything it touches. I tell you, in all my years of looking into the dark corners of the human soul, the betrayal of a spouse remains the most chilling. You share a home, you share a life, completely unaware that the person sleeping next to you is coldly calculating the exact payout of your life insurance policy. It was a quiet night on October 22nd, 1992, in Stanton, Missouri. It is a rural stretch of farmland and woods, the kind of isolated place where secrets are easily buried in the dark. Just after 9 o'clock at night, a passing motorist spots a bright blaze out in a lonely field. Firefighters arrive within minutes to extinguish the burning truck. What they find inside is not just a tragedy, it is a statement. A body, burned entirely beyond recognition, is sitting in the front passenger seat. The vehicle is totally gutted. Fire is a violent force that destroys almost everything, but it does not destroy absolutely everything. We have a metal frame, and on that frame, a vehicle identification number. That number leads investigators directly to a man named Danny Coleman, living to consume them. Nearby lay a partially smoked marijuana cigarette. Most intriguing of all was a light blue bandana wrapped tightly around a glass beer bottle. In Arlington, light blue was a color associated with active local gangs, who were known to occasionally extort local businesses. The presence of the bandana felt almost like a calling card, left behind to send a message. Yet, experienced detectives know that sometimes a crime scene can appear too perfect. The placement of the gang colors, the drugs left in plain sight, and the chaotic ransacking of low-value items like compact discs raise a troubling question. Was this a genuine robbery, or had the scene been carefully staged to mislead the police? The investigators decided to keep an open mind, collecting the marijuana cigarette, taking hair fibers, and swabbing the blood splatters to see if they could find any foreign genetic material. They also processed massive amounts of duct tape used to bind the victims, searching for fingerprints or hidden biological clues. Chapter 5, Whispers of Betrayal. While the forensic teams worked, Detective Stewart sat down with the family to gather background information. Due to the intense grief and shock of the household, Chow Tran was the only family member who felt capable of speaking clearly with the authorities. Chow explained that on the evening of June 9th, the entire family had gathered to celebrate his father-in-law's birthday. The atmosphere had been joyous, and the elderly couple had stayed at the party until approximately 10 o'clock in the evening. They were given a ride home by another relative, which was the last time anyone admitted to seeing them alive. When asked if the couple kept large sums of cash in the home, Chow admitted that while some traditional families prefer to keep their savings close at hand, his in-laws did not possess much wealth. He described the sewing business as struggling and reiterated that they believed the curse had ruined their financial standing. The following day, the detectives attended the autopsies at the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's office. The medical examiner confirmed that while both victims had suffered significant blunt force trauma to their heads, likely inflicted by a heavy object such as a hammer or a small bat, that was not the cause of death. Instead, the examination revealed a far more agonizing truth. Hong Lee's face had been wrapped in 25 feet of duct tape, while Long Nguyen's face was bound with 10 feet of the same material. They had died of suffocation. The sheer cruelty required to inflict such a slow and painful death suggested a deep, personal animosity rather than the random violence of a street robbery. A few days into the investigation, a surprising phone call shifted the focus of the inquiry. An insurance representative contacted the police department to report that the deceased couple held life insurance policies totaling $1 million. When Detective Stewart inquired about the designated beneficiaries, he discovered that one of the primary recipients of the potential payout was none other than Chow Tran himself. Chapter 6, The Cold Years. On June 13, 2012, Chow Tran was invited to the police station for a formal interview. He was cooperative explaining that the substantial insurance policies had been established to ensure that the commercial sewing business could survive and continue supporting the extended family if one of the founders were to pass away. Chow and the other family members provided detailed timelines of their whereabouts on the night of the murders, establishing solid alibis that placed them together at the birthday celebration and a subsequent gathering until late into the night. The police collected genetic samples and fingerprints from Chow and every other relative to compare against the evidence recovered from the apartment. When the laboratory results returned, there was a profound sense of disappointment. The genetic material recovered from the partially smoked marijuana cigarette did not match Chow, any family member, or any profile within the National Database of Genetic Profiles. For 2 long years, the investigation stalled. Detective Stewart and his team interviewed over 60 people, including neighbors, business associates, and acquaintances, but no viable suspects emerged. The files were placed into the cold case archives, and the hum of the city went on, leaving the tragic deaths of Long and Hong an unsolved mystery. But justice, though sometimes slow, possesses a relentless momentum. In the year 2015, a sudden breakthrough occurred. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested in Houston on a felony charge of horse theft because a felony conviction required the submission of a genetic sample to the national database. His profile was entered into the system for the first time. At the time of the murders in 2012, Willie had been only 16 years old and had no prior adult criminal record, which was why his genetic profile had not appeared in the initial searches. But now, as an adult felon, his identity was instantly linked to the genetic material left on the marijuana cigarette at the Arlington crime scene. Chapter 7: Unraveling the Plot. In October of 2015, investigators traveled to interview the 19-year-old Willie Guillory. Confronted with the undeniable scientific evidence placing him inside the apartment on the night of the crime, the young man broke down in tears and confessed. Willie revealed that he had not acted alone. He explained that in 2012, his uncle, Bobby Guillory, had recruited him to help with a job in Arlington. They had driven 3 hours from Houston, armed with a key to the victim's apartment, which had been provided to them beforehand. According to Willie, the entire robbery had been an elaborate theatrical performance. They had purposely scattered belongings, left a blue bandana, and placed the crushed pills to make the crime appear to be the work of a local street gang. When the elderly couple returned home, a violent struggle ensued, and the victims were eventually incapacitated, bound with duct tape, and left in the closet. When asked why they had targeted this gentle couple, Willie pointed directly to a woman named Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor from Houston. He claimed that Daphne had complained that the family owed her a massive amount of money and had declared that if they did not pay, she wanted them dead. Armed with this explosive revelation, the detectives moved quickly. On December 16th, 2015, they arrested 52-year-old Bobby Guillory in Katy, Texas. Faced with the reality of capital murder charges, Bobby also confessed, confirming his nephew's story. Bobby, who had no prior criminal record, explained that he had been in desperate financial straits in 2011 after losing his job. Daphne Wright had taken advantage of his desperation, offering him $10,000 to carry out the hit. He revealed that the financial relationship between the victims and Daphne was far more sinister than a simple business transaction. Daphne had operated as a spiritual loan shark, charging the struggling family astronomical fees for her services. Over time, the debt had ballooned to an astonishing sum between $250,000 and $280,000. When the family could no longer pay, Daphne discovered the existence of the $1 million life insurance policies. She allegedly proposed a horrific solution by eliminating the elderly couple. The family could collect the insurance payout and finally settle their massive spiritual debt to her. Chapter 8: the pursuit of justice. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Bobby Guillory revealed how he had obtained the key to the apartment. He claimed that Daphne had received the key directly from Chow Tran. This revelation deeply troubled Detective Stewart, who had spent years communicating with Chow as a grieving victim. When investigators attempted to interview Chow again, they found themselves blocked by a defense attorney. In August of 2016, detectives obtained a search warrant for Daphne Wright's Houston home and placed her under arrest. Inside her residence, they discovered detailed financial ledgers that confirmed she was charging clients tens of thousands of dollars for spiritual services, including the removal and placement of curses. The legal strategy that followed was complex. To secure a conviction against Daphne Wright, whom prosecutors viewed as the calculating mastermind behind the entire conspiracy, they made a difficult decision. They offered Chow Tran immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full and honest testimony. During the trial in August of 2019, Chow took the stand. He painted a picture of a family paralyzed by fear, believing that Daphne possessed genuine spiritual powers that could destroy their lives if they did not comply with her demands. He claimed that his mother-in-law, Hong Le, had even suggested sacrificing herself so the family could collect the insurance money to pay the debt, a claim that investigators viewed with deep skepticism. The defense argued that Chow was a manipulative actor who had orchestrated the scheme to pocket the substantial insurance payout for himself, using his immunity to escape punishment. Ultimately, the jury delivered their verdict. Daphne Wright was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby Guillory and Willie Guillory also faced severe legal consequences for their roles in the tragedy. Though the legal proceedings brought a measure of closure, the memory of Long Nguyen and Hong Le remained a poignant reminder of the dangers of desperation and the lengths to which greed can drive the human heart. For the community of Arlington, their story became a cautionary tale, a solemn reminder that the true American dream is built on the quiet, honest labor of love, and that those who seek to exploit the vulnerable will eventually find their deeds brought into the unforgiving light of justice. The morning sun always seemed to rise with particular warmth over the city of Arlington, Texas. In the early years of the new millennium, the city was a bustling mosaic of cultures, a place where the old world met the new with open arms. Among the thousands who had come to build a legacy were Long Nguyen and his beloved wife, Hong Le. They had left Vietnam in the year 2000, bringing with them nothing but their time-honored traditions, an unwavering work ethic, and an abundance of love for their 3 children and grandchildren. For Long and Hong, America was not just a map of streets and highways. It was a blank canvas waiting for their colorful threads. They settled in Tarrant County, a vibrant area known for its welcoming Vietnamese community. This community had flourished since the late 1970s, drawing in families who sought to preserve their rich heritage while embracing the endless possibilities of their new home. With determination in their hearts, Long and Hong established a commercial sewing business. To bridge the gap between their traditional ways and the fast-paced American market, they enlisted the help of their son-in-law, Chow Tran. Chow was 38 years old, charismatic, and spoke English with a confident ease that made him the perfect public face for the business. He managed the contracts, negotiated with suppliers, and shook hands with clients. For nearly a decade, the hum of the sewing machines was the heartbeat of the family. Their dedication paid off in ways they had only dreamed of when they secured a lucrative contract to manufacture garments for a global commercial giant, including beloved brands like Disney. They were a prominent, respected family, known for their generosity and sweetness. They never bothered anyone, and in return, the community showered them with affection. But as the year 2011 approached, the economic tides began to turn. The cherished contract with the commercial giant was lost, and the steady hum of the sewing machines began to falter. The business entered a quiet, challenging season. In their culture, a sudden string of misfortune was often viewed not just as a financial hurdle, but as a spiritual imbalance. They believed that when the path became dark, one must seek guidance to restore harmony and welcome protection of the traditional gods of fortune. Desperate to protect their family legacy, Chao Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong Lu, began searching for a solution. In a local Vietnamese newspaper, they found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor located 250 miles away in Houston. The advisor, a woman named Daphne Wright, claimed she possessed a rare ability to lift heavy curses, reverse bad luck, and bring back prosperity, with hope blooming once more in their hearts. Chow contacted Daphne and made the journey to Houston for a consultation. Daphne performed an elaborate ritual, promising that their fortunes would soon turn around. The family returned to Arlington with renewed optimism, believing that the dark clouds would finally part. Chapter 2: The Quiet Morning of June 10th. On the morning of June 10th, 2012, the early air in Arlington was unusually still. At exactly 7:29 in the morning, the Emergency Dispatch Center received a call from Chao Tran. His voice carried a heavy wave of anxiety as he requested a welfare check on his elderly in-laws who lived in a nearby apartment complex. "Can you give me their names?" the dispatcher asked gently. "My dad's name is Long, last name Nguyen," Chow replied, spelling out the letters carefully. "He is 70-something right now. My son, my wife, and I went to look. They said they saw everything falling down inside." Officer Weller, a dedicated officer with 14 years of experience, was dispatched to the scene. When he arrived, he noticed a large gathering of family members standing outside the apartment. It was a scene that immediately felt unusual for a standard welfare check, especially so early in the day. The family was too terrified to enter, sensing that something was deeply wrong. Officer Weller walked up to the residence and noticed that one of the windows was slightly open. Upon entering the apartment, the signs of a disturbance were immediately apparent. The living room was in disarray, with compact discs scattered across the floor and furniture moved out of place, resembling a burglary. Officer Weller called out, his voice echoing through the quiet rooms. There was no answer. He checked the kitchen and the bathroom, finding them completely empty. The only room left was the bedroom. He stepped inside, shining his flashlight around. At first glance, the room appeared empty, and he felt a brief wave of relief, hoping the elderly couple had simply gone for an early morning walk. But as he turned to leave, the beam of his flashlight caught dark hand smudges on the wall next to a very small closet. An instinct, honed by years of service, told him to pause. He hesitated for a moment, a sudden tension filling the air. He opened the closet door. Inside the small space, he discovered the quiet, still forms of Long and Hong. They had been bound tightly with duct tape around their arms and legs, and more tape covered their heads and mouths. The severity of the scene was overwhelming. Officer Weller, stepping back into the living room, stood in silence for a moment to collect himself before speaking into his radio to call for backup and the crime scene unit. Chapter 3: The Stage Puzzle. Within the hour, veteran homicide investigators arrived at the apartment. Among them was a detective who had spent 21 years solving the city's most difficult cases. Even for a seasoned force, the scene was profoundly unsettling. The physical evidence suggested a struggle had begun right at the front entrance, with marks on the carpet, the couch, and the walls. At first glance, the apartment pointed toward a robbery gone wrong. However, several unusual items caught the attention of the investigators. A plate of crushed prescription pills sat on the coffee table. A partially burned marijuana cigarette was left nearby. A light blue bandana was carefully wrapped around a beer bottle. In Arlington, certain local youth groups and gangs were known to use specific colors, and the light blue bandana resembled a potential signature. Yet, The sheer intensity of the crime did not align with a typical robbery. The investigators began to wonder if the scene had been carefully staged to mislead them. Most local gang offenses did not involve such extreme, personal measures against elderly individuals who had no connection to the streets. The presence of the bandana and the pills felt almost too convenient, as if someone had laid out a trail of breadcrumbs for the police to follow. The detectives decided to focus on gathering physical evidence. The crime scene unit meticulously processed the apartment, collecting the genetic material from the marijuana cigarette, hair fibers from the carpet and the closet, fingerprint samples from the duct tape and the beer bottle, swabs of the physical traces left throughout the rooms. As the physical evidence was sent to the laboratory for analysis, the investigators sat down with Chow Tran, the primary English-speaking representative for the family. Chow explained that the entire family had gathered the previous evening to celebrate Long's birthday. The couple had enjoyed a wonderful evening, staying until 10:30 before receiving a ride home. Chow mentioned that while traditional Vietnamese families often preferred to keep their savings at home rather than in commercial banks, his in-laws did not possess a significant amount of cash. He painted a picture of a sweet, hard-working couple who had no known enemies in the world. Chapter 4: The Shadow of the Policy. The following day, detectives attended the medical examination. The results revealed a heartbreaking truth. While the couple had suffered physical trauma from a blunt object, the primary cause of death was suffocation due to the extensive layers of duct tape wrapped around their faces. It was a tragic end for two gentle souls who had built their lives on kindness and community. Just as the detectives were wrapping up their initial briefings, a phone call redirected the course of the investigation. A representative from a prominent insurance company contacted the police department. It was standard procedure for insurance providers to notify authorities when a substantial claim was associated with a pending investigation. The detectives learned that there was an active life insurance policy on the couple valued at $1 million. When they inquired about the beneficiaries, one name stood out clearly: Chow Tran. On June 13, 2012, the investigators invited Chow to the station to discuss the business and the substantial insurance policy. Chow was cooperative, explaining that the policy had been established to ensure the survival of the family's sewing business in the event of a tragedy. He provided a detailed timeline of his whereabouts on the night of the incident, explaining that after the birthday celebration, the family had stayed together playing cards until well past 10 o'clock. To verify his account, the police collected genetic samples and fingerprints from Chow and several other family members. When the laboratory results returned weeks later, the findings brought a wave of disappointment. The genetic code recovered from the marijuana cigarette did not match Chow, any of the family members, or any profiles stored in the Federal Combined DNA Index System. The investigation seemed to hit a wall. Over the next several months, the detectives interviewed more than 50 individuals, including neighbors, business associates, and community members. Despite their exhaustive efforts, no new leads emerged. The sewing business eventually folded, the family slowly scattered, and the case grew quiet, remaining unresolved for over 3 years. Chapter 5: The Stolen Horse and the Broken Silence. The breakthrough did not come from a high-tech laboratory or a dramatic confession, but from an entirely unrelated and unusual incident in late 2015. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested in Houston for a felony offense involving the theft of a horse, because a felony conviction required the submission of a genetic profile into the federal database. Willie's genetic code was entered into the national system for the first time. At the time of the Arlington tragedy, in 2012, Willie had been only 16 years old, a minor with no prior adult record, which was why his profile had never appeared in the database. When the system ran a routine comparison, it flashed a perfect match. The genetic material on the partially burned marijuana cigarette from the Arlington crime scene belonged to Willie Guillory. On October 17, 2015, the Arlington police located Willie and brought him in for questioning, initially holding him on a minor parole violation to avoid alerting others. When a detective sat down with the young man and explained the scientific certainty of the genetic match, the gravity of the situation hit him. Willie broke down in tears and agreed to speak the truth. He confessed that he'd been present in the apartment, but insisted he had not acted alone. He had been led there by his uncle, 49-year-old Bobby Guillory. According to Willie, his Uncle Bobby had approached him in June of 2012, asking for his assistance with a task in Arlington. The journey took them 3 hours. Willie explained that Bobby possessed a key to the apartment, allowing them to enter without forcing the lock. The plan, Willie revealed, was to stage a mock burglary to mislead the authorities. Bobby had brought the beer bottle, the light blue bandana, the pills, and the marijuana to create the illusion of a gang-related incident. Willie had smoked a small portion of the cigarette, entirely unaware that this minor action would eventually unravel the entire scheme years later. When the elderly couple returned home, the situation quickly escalated. Bobby had restrained the couple while Willie assisted in moving them into the closet, where they were bound with duct tape. When the detectives asked why they had targeted the specific couple, Willie revealed a name that connected all the pieces: Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor from Houston. "I met Daphne through my Uncle Bobby," Willie explained. "She said that people owed her a large amount of money, and she wanted them to pay up. She told my uncle that if they did not pay, she wanted them gone. We were used by Daphne. She was the driving force behind everything." Chapter 6. The Ledger Curses. With Willie's detailed confession in hand, the investigators moved swiftly. On December 16, 2015, they traveled to Katy, Texas, to arrest Bobby Guillory on charges of capital murder. Initially quiet, Bobby quickly realized the strength of the evidence against him when presented with the search warrant for his genetic profile. He broke down, expressing deep regret and fear, explaining that he had never been in trouble with the law before. Bobby confirmed that Daphne Wright had orchestrated the entire plan, promising him a payment of $10,000. At the time, Bobby had been unemployed, facing severe financial distress, and felt he had no other choice. He described Daphne not as a spiritual healer, but as a financial predator who operated a complex web of spiritual debts. Over the years, the financial obligations of the Sewing family to Daphne had ballooned to an astronomical figure, between $250,000 and $280,000. When Daphne realized they could not pay, she focused on the substantial life insurance policies held by the family. According to Bobby, Daphne had acquired the key to the apartment directly from Chow Tran, suggesting a deeper level of involvement from within the family itself. The investigators immediately set out to locate Daphne Wright. On August 31st, 2016, they arrived at her home in Houston. To her neighbors, Daphne appeared to be a strong, family-oriented woman who managed her household with a firm hand. When questioned, she admitted to knowing Chow as a client, but refused to discuss their financial arrangements or the details of the tragedy. The police returned with an arrest warrant and a search warrant for her residence. Inside her home, they discovered a detailed ledger that revealed the true nature of her business. The ledger listed numerous clients, with charges ranging from $10,000 to $40,000 for various spiritual services, including the placing and removing of curses. Chapter 7. The Balance of Justice. The discovery of the ledger provided the prosecutors with the evidence they needed to bring the case to trial. However, to secure a conviction against Daphne as the mastermind behind conspiracy, they needed a direct witness who could explain the internal dynamics of the family's relationship with her. The state offered Chow Tran a controversial agreement of immunity in exchange for his full, truthful testimony against Bobby, Willie, and Daphne. During the trial in August of 2019, Chow took the stand. He painted a vivid picture of a family paralyzed by fear, believing that Daphne possessed genuine spiritual powers that could bring ruin upon their lives if they failed to pay her fees. Chow testified that his mother-in-law, Hong, had been so overwhelmed by the debt that she had desperately suggested sacrificing herself so the family could collect the insurance money to pay Daphne. Daphne, seeing an opportunity to clear the entire debt, had insisted that both Long and Hong must pass away so they could collect on both policies. The defense strongly contested Chow's credibility, arguing that he had engineered the scheme to secure the $850,000 of insurance payouts for his own benefit, pointing out the lack of written documentation for the alleged $280,000 debt. Despite the intense cross-examination, the jury focused on the overwhelming physical evidence, the ledger and the coordinated testimonies of Willie and Bobby. In September of 2019, the jury reached a verdict. Daphne Wright was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced the legal consequences of their actions, bringing a long-awaited resolution to a complex investigation. Though the legal journey left some questions lingering, the resolution of the case brought a profound sense of relief to the Arlington community. The memory of Long, Gwen, and Hong Lu was honored not by the darkness of their departure, but by the enduring light of the legacy they had built. Their stories serve as a powerful reminder of the importance of community, the dangers of falling victim to deceptive promises, and the ultimate triumph of truth and justice over greed. The sewing machines of Arlington were silent, but the warmth, love, and resilience of the community they had helped build continued to shine brightly. The morning sun over Arlington, Texas, usually brought a warm, golden glow to the suburban streets. But on the 10th of June in the year 2012, the air felt heavy, laden with an unspoken anxiety. At exactly 7:29 in the morning, the quiet routine of the emergency dispatch center was interrupted by a phone call. The voice on the other end belonged to Chow Tran, a 38-year-old Vietnamese immigrant whose tone vibrated with a tense, breathless worry. He was calling to request a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, Long Nguyen and Hong Lee. When the dispatcher asked for their names, Chow carefully spelled them out, explaining that his father-in-law, Long, was in his 70s. There was a frantic exchange as Chow explained that his teenage son and his wife had gone to the apartment to check on them, only to find the window open and things inside looking completely out of place. Terrified of what they might find, the family gathered outside the residence, waiting for the authorities to arrive. Officer Weller, a dedicated officer with 14 years of experience under his belt, was the first to arrive at the scene. Right away, he could tell that this was not a typical welfare check. An entire family stood outside the apartment building, their faces pale with apprehension. It was far too early in the morning for a routine check, and the sheer number of gathered relatives signaled that something was deeply wrong. Stepping through the front door, Officer Weller immediately noticed the classic signs of a disturbance. The living room was in complete disarray, yet as he moved through the kitchen and the bathroom, calling out into the silence, there was no response. The only room left to check was the master bedroom. Initially, the room appeared empty. The officer turned to leave, but as his flashlight swept across the wall next to a small closet, he paused. Hand smudges marked the wall. A sudden instinctual hesitation gripped him, a quiet voice whispering not to open that door. But duty prevailed. Officer Weller pulled the closet door open, and the sight that met his eyes would stay with him forever. Inside lay the elderly couple, bound tightly with duct tape. There was blood indicating a violent struggle, and it was instantly clear that they had passed away. Shocked and deeply shaken, the officer walked out of the bedroom, momentarily unable to speak or even use his radio, standing in the middle of the living room. Soon, veteran homicide detective Stewart arrived. With 21 years of experience in the department, Detective Stewart had seen many tragic things, but this scene was among the most heartbreaking. The elderly couple was highly respected, known in the local community as sweet, generous, and hard-working people who had no known enemies. Long Nguyen and Hong Lee had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000, bringing with them a deep love for their heritage and a dream of building a legacy for their 3 children and grandchildren. In Arlington, which boasted a vibrant and close-knit Vietnamese community dating back to the late 1970s, the couple had started a commercial sewing business. They enlisted the help of their son-in-law, Chow, who spoke fluent English and served as the public face of the business. Coordinating with contractors, for nearly a decade, the business thrived, even securing a lucrative contract to manufacture garments for a major entertainment giant. However, by the year 2011, their luck had taken a turn for the worse. They lost a key contract, and the business began to decline. Desperate to reverse their fortunes, the family turned to traditional spiritual beliefs. In many traditional cultures, when a family faces major crises like financial ruin, they may seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor to perform rituals meant to lift curses and invite good fortune. Searching through a local Vietnamese newspaper, Chow and his mother-in-law found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor located 250 miles away in Houston. The advisor, a woman named Daphne Wright, advertised services to remove bad curses and bring prosperity. Encouraged by Hong Lee, Chow contacted Daphne and visited her Houston home. She performed a ritual, filling the family with hope. Yet, a year later, instead of good fortune, a dark tragedy befell the family. At the crime scene, detectives noted that the attacks seemed to have commenced the moment the couple walked through there. Front door. Blood was found on the carpet, the couch, the table, and the walls. The apartment had been ransacked, but certain items left behind caught the investigators' attention. A plate of crushed prescription pills on the coffee table, a marijuana cigarette, and a light blue bandana wrapped around a beer bottle. While these items initially suggested the involvement of local youth gangs, the scene felt almost too perfectly arranged, as if someone had deliberately staged it to look like a robbery gone wrong. Detective Stewart remained skeptical. DNA swabs from the marijuana cigarette, hair fibers, and fingerprint from the duct tape were sent for immediate testing. Meanwhile, investigators interviewed Chow Tran, who explained that the family had been celebrating his father-in-law's birthday the night before. The elderly couple had left the party around 10:30 in the evening, receiving a ride home from another family member. Chow mentioned that while Vietnamese families sometimes kept cash at home, his in-laws did not have much, as the sewing business had been struggling. On the 11th of June, the autopsies revealed a devastating detail. Although the victims had suffered blunt force trauma to the head, the actual cause of death was suffocation. The perpetrators had wrapped Hong's face in 25 feet of duct tape and Long's face in 10 feet of duct tape. The sheer malice of the act convinced detectives that the motive was not a simple robbery, but a deliberate intent to end their lives. Shortly after, Detective Stewart received a call from an insurance company. It revealed that the couple had a life insurance policy worth at least $1 million, and one of the primary beneficiaries was Chow Tran. When questioned about this on the 13th of June, Chow explained that the policy was intended to ensure the continuity of the business if either partner passed away. He provided a solid alibi for himself and his family, stating they were playing cards together until late that night. When the DNA results from the marijuana cigarette came back, they did not match Chow, any family member, or anyone in the national database. The case went cold for over 2 years, leaving the family and the community waiting for answers. Then, in the year 2015, a breakthrough occurred. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested for a felony involving the theft of a horse near Houston. Because he was now an adult with a felony conviction, his DNA profile was entered into the national database. A match was instantly flagged. Willie's DNA matched the marijuana cigarette left at the Arlington crime scene. At the time of the murders in the year 2012, Willie had been only 16 years old, which was why his profile had not been in the system. On the 17th of October, in the year 2015, detectives brought Willie in for questioning. When confronted with the scientific evidence linking him to the apartment, the young man broke down and confessed. He revealed that he had not acted alone. His 49-year-old uncle, Bobby Guillory, had recruited him for the job. Willie explained that they had driven 3 hours to Arlington, using a key provided to them to enter the apartment, and staged the burglary using beer bottles, a blue bandana, and pills to mimic gang activity. When asked why they had targeted the sweet, elderly couple, Willie delivered an explosive revelation. It was a murder-for-hire plot orchestrated by Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor. Willie claimed that Daphne wanted the couple dead because they owed her a massive amount of money. Armed with this information, detectives located and arrested 52-year-old Bobby Guillory in Katy, Texas, on the 16th of December in the year 2015. Bobby, who had no prior criminal record, also confessed, expressing deep fear and remorse. He admitted that Daphne had offered him $10,000 to carry out the deed, taking advantage of his desperate financial situation after he was laid off from work. Bobby explained that Chow and Hong had run up a massive debt with Daphne, ballooning to between $250,000 and $280,000, as they continuously paid for her rituals on credit. When Daphne demanded payment, she learned about the substantial life insurance policies. According to Bobby, Daphne masterminded the entire plot to collect on the insurance. Most shocking of all, Bobby claimed that the key to the apartment had come directly from Chow Tran. Detectives were stunned by the possibility of such a deep betrayal. They turned their attention to Daphne Wright, visiting her Houston home in August of the year 2016. Daphne was a commanding presence in her household, living with her husband, Howard, and their 3 daughters. While she acknowledged knowing Chow as a client, she was cold and uncooperative regarding her financial dealings. After obtaining an arrest warrant, police searched Daphne's home and discovered ledgers detailing extraordinary fees of $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, and $40,000 for her spiritual services. Her husband maintained his wife's innocence, claiming complete ignorance of any criminal plot. In the year 2015, prosecutors subpoenaed Chow's financial records and discovered that he had purchased a new home shortly after his in-laws' deaths, while the sewing business had folded. Facing potential charges, Chow, accompanied by his attorney, agreed to cooperate in exchange for immunity. Chow painted a picture of psychological manipulation, claiming that he and his mother-in-law were terrified of Daphne's supposed spiritual powers. He even claimed that Hong had suggested sacrificing herself so the family could collect the insurance money to pay off the debt, and that Daphne had insisted both must die to cover full amount. While detectives found the idea of Hong volunteering to be killed hard to believe, they needed Chow's testimony to convict the coordinator of the crime. On the 26th of August in the year 2019, Daphne Wright's trial began. Chow took the stand, portraying Daphne as a greedy and controlling figure who held absolute sway over his family. The defense countered by pointing out that Chow had pocketed $850,000 from the insurance policies, arguing that he was a true beneficiary of the tragedy and had used the immunity deal to escape. Justice. In September of the year 2019, the jury reached its verdict. Daphne Wright was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Although Detective Stewart felt a lingering sense of injustice that Chow Tran walked away free, he remained steadfast in his belief that truth ultimately finds its way into the light, and that those who do wrong must eventually answer for their actions. The morning sun over Arlington, Texas, always seemed to carry a promise of warmth, casting a bright, golden glaze over the quiet suburban streets. On the 10th of June in the year 2012, the early air was particularly peaceful. Birds chirped from the branches of mature oak trees, and the gentle hum of distant highway traffic provided a familiar background melody to the neighborhood. Yet, beneath the serene facade, a family was gathering outside an apartment complex, their hearts heavy with an unspoken, growing anxiety. Chow Tran, a 38-year-old immigrant who had worked tirelessly to establish a life in this sprawling state, paced back and forth on the pavement. He clutched his mobile phone, his fingers trembling slightly as he dialed the emergency dispatch number. It was exactly 7:29 in the morning. When the dispatcher answered, Chow took a deep, shaky breath, trying to steady his voice. "Can you please send someone to check on my family?" Chow asked, his English clear but laced with an undeniable undercurrent of panic. "I need a welfare check on my elderly in-laws." "Can you give me their name, sir?" the operator replied, her tone calm and professional, designed to soothe the caller. "My father-in-law's name is Long," Chow said, spelling out the letters slowly to ensure accuracy. "Last name Nguyen. He is 70-something right now. He and my mother-in-law live here." As Chow spoke, his teenage son stood nearby, looking anxiously at the apartment door. Chow explained to the operator that his family had become deeply worried. They had knocked repeatedly, but no one had answered. Even more troubling, they had noticed that one of the windows of the residence was slightly open, a detail that felt completely wrong for a couple who valued security and order above all else. Too terrified to step inside themselves, fearing what they might discover, the family chose to wait on the curb, praying for the arrival of the authorities. Chapter 2, The Knock at the Door. Officer Weller was a seasoned member of the local police force, accustomed to the standard rhythm of early morning shifts. When a dispatch call came through, he was nearby and arrived at the apartment complex within minutes. To Weller, this did not look like a typical welfare check. Usually, such calls involved a single concerned neighbor or a distant relative. Here, an entire family stood gathered outside, their faces pale and their posture tense. The search inside. The officer walked up the concrete steps, his heavy boots echoing in the quiet morning. He knocked firmly on the door, calling out to the occupants. Silence was his only reply. With the family's permission, Weller entered the apartment through the unlocked entrance. Immediately, his law enforcement instincts put him on high alert. The living space was in complete disarray, showing the classic telltale signs of a burglary or struggle. Furniture was pushed out of place. Compact discs were scattered across the floor. Drawers had been pulled open, their contents rummaged through. Weller moved cautiously through the rooms, his flashlight cutting through the dimness. "Is anyone home?" "Police department," he called out, but his voice simply bounced off the walls. He checked the kitchen, finding it empty. He searched the bathroom, finding nothing. The only room left to inspect was the master bedroom. Upon his first quick scan of the bedroom, Weller did not see anyone. The bed was empty, and the room seemed quiet. Believing that perhaps the elderly couple had simply gone out for an early morning walk to enjoy the cool air, he felt a brief wave of relief. He turned around to leave the room, his flashlight beam sweeping across the wall near a small closet. That was when he paused. On the wall, right next to the closet door, were distinct hand smudges. It was a small, seemingly insignificant detail, but Weller's experience told him to hesitate. Every instinct he possessed urged him to be careful, yet he knew his duty required him to check every corner. He reached out, grasped a handle, and slowly pulled the closet door open. A scene of deep sorrow. Inside the small closet, the search came to a tragic end. Long Nguyen and his wife, Hong Lee, were there, but they were beyond any earthly help. They had been bound tightly with duct tape, their heads and mouths covered, and they bore the unmistakable signs of severe physical assault. Weller, despite his 14 years of service, felt a wave of shock wash over him. He stepped back into the living room, momentarily unable to speak or even use his radio. After a few moments of grounding himself, Weller regained his composure. He picked up his radio and requested a supervisor and the crime scene unit. Shortly thereafter, homicide investigators, including a veteran detective with 21 years of experience in the department, arrived at the scene. The investigators quickly noted the extreme violence of the scene. It was clear that the struggle had begun right at the front entrance, with evidence of physical trauma stretching from the living room to the back closet. The detectives began to ask themselves a fundamental question that guides every such inquiry. Who could possibly harbor enough malice to commit such an act against an elderly, gentle couple who were widely loved by their neighbors? Chapter 3: Pursuing the American Dream. To understand the tragedy, one had to understand the journey of Long Nguyen and Hong Lee. In the year 2000, the couple had made the monumental decision to leave their homeland of Vietnam and immigrate to the United States. They brought with them their children, their grandchildren, and a deep appreciation for their cultural traditions. They chose Arlington, Texas, as their new home, drawn by the city's vibrant, welcoming Vietnamese-American community. Long Nguyen and Hong Lee arrived in the United States year 2000, established commercial sewing business, secured major garment contracts, e.g. Disney. The first major wave of Vietnamese immigrants had arrived in the region after 1975, following the fall of Saigon. Over the decades, the community had grown, establishing thriving businesses, temples, and cultural centers. Long and Hong saw this environment as the perfect place to build a legacy for their family. A family enterprise. In Texas, the couple established a commercial sewing business. They invited their son-in-law, Chow Tran, to help run the daily operations. Chow, who spoke excellent English, became the public face of the business, coordinating with contractors and managing logistics. For nearly a decade, their hard work paid off handsomely. They achieved a crowning milestone when they secured a lucrative contract to manufacture garments for a global entertainment giant, Disney. However, by the year 2011, their fortunes began to shift. The highly valued contract was lost, and the business began a steady, worrying decline. As financial pressures mounted, the family turned to traditional beliefs for solace and solutions. In many traditional Asian cultures, spiritual harmony is viewed as directly connected to earthly prosperity. When facing severe adversity, such as business failure or legal troubles, families often seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor to perform cleansing rituals, remove perceived curses, and restore good fortune. Chapter 4: The Search for a Spiritual Savior. Determined to reverse their string of bad luck, Chow Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong Lee, searched through local Vietnamese language newspapers. They eventually found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor located in Houston, approximately 250 miles away. The advisor, a woman named Daphne Wright, claimed she possessed a rare ability to lift negative influences and cast protective blessings. The high cost of hope. Chow traveled to Houston to meet with Daphne at her residence. Intrigued and hopeful, the family agreed to employ her services. Daphne performed various traditional rituals, and for a short time, the family felt a renewed sense of optimism. They believed that their business would soon recover and that their hardships would fade. Unfortunately, the spiritual intervention did not yield the financial recovery they desperately needed. Instead of stepping back, the family became deeper entangled, continuing to invest large sums of money into more frequent and elaborate rituals. Because they could not pay cash up front, Daphne began to extend them credit. Over the course of many months, the spiritual debt accumulated rapidly, eventually ballooning to an astronomical sum of between $250,000 and $280,000. As the debt grew, the warm relationship between the family and their spiritual advisor began to turn cold, transforming into a source of immense pressure and fear. Chapter 5, Red Herrings and Cold Trails. Back at the crime scene in June of 2012, detectives searched for clues that would explain the assault. They discovered several items that seemed designed to paint a very specific picture. A plate of crushed prescription pills lay on the coffee table. A partially consumed marijuana cigarette was left nearby. A light blue bandana was wrapped around a glass beer bottle. To the investigators, the blue bandana was a significant detail. Arlington was home to several active street gangs, some of which utilized specific colors to mark their presence or claim responsibility for criminal acts. However, the seasoned homicide detectives remained highly skeptical. To them, the scene felt almost too organized, as if someone had deliberately placed these items to mislead the police. They theorized that the gang-related evidence had been staged to cover up a much more personal motive, the question of the policy. As part of their standard procedure, investigators began interviewing family members. Chow Tran, acting as the primary spokesperson due to his language skills, met with Detective Stewart. Chow explained that the night before the discovery, the entire family had gathered to celebrate Long's birthday at a lively party. According to Chow, the elderly couple had enjoyed themselves thoroughly, leaving around 10:30 at night, when another relative gave them a ride home. Timeline of June 9th and 10th. For 30 p.m. family gathers at Chow's home for the birthday party. 10 p.m. family plays cards together. 10:30 p.m. Long and Hong receive a ride back to their apartment. 7:29 a.m. Chow Tran calls emergency dispatch for a welfare check. When asked about potential enemies or financial assets, Chow painted a picture of a modest, hard-working family with no known adversaries. However, a few days into the investigation, Detective Stewart received an unexpected phone call from an insurance company. The representative informed him that Long and Hong carried a substantial life insurance policy worth at least $1 million. When the detective inquired about the beneficiaries, he learned that Chow Tran was among those listed to receive the funds. When confronted with this information, Chow explained that the policy had been established solely to protect the family business and ensure its continuity in the event of a tragedy. Because Chow and the other family members possessed consistent, verified alibis for the night in question, and because their genetic profiles did not match the materials recovered from the apartment, the police could not establish a direct link. With no fresh leads, the case slowly went cold. For more than 2 years, the file sat on a shelf, waiting for a spark of new information. Chapter 6, The Unexpected Connection. That spark finally arrived in the year 2015, originating from an entirely unrelated and somewhat unusual incident. In Houston, a young man named Willie Guillory was arrested for a felony involving the theft of a horse. Because a felony conviction requires the submission of a person's genetic profile to the National Combined DNA Index System, Willie's biological data was entered into the database for the first time. At the time of the Arlington tragedy, in 2012, Willie had been only 16 years old, a minor with no prior adult record, which was why his genetic profile had never been cataloged. When the system ran a routine comparison, it produced a perfect match to the genetic material left on the marijuana cigarette at the crime scene. The interrogation of Willie. Detectives wasted no time. They located Willie, who was then 19, and brought him in for questioning on a parole violation. When investigators explained the scientific certainty of the genetic evidence linking him to the Arlington apartment, the young man broke down. Willie confessed that he had been present at the apartment, but he insisted he was not the mastermind. He explained that his uncle, 49-year-old Bobby Guillory, had recruited him for a job in Arlington, promising that they were simply going to perform a task to help a friend. Willie detailed how they had traveled to the apartment, using a physical key provided to them to gain entry without force. Their instructions were to make the apartment look as though it had been ransacked by a local street. Gong. They brought the beer bottle, the blue bandana, and the other items specifically to leave behind as a false trail. However, when the elderly couple returned home sooner than expected, the situation escalated. Willie claimed his uncle confronted the couple, using physical force to quiet them, before they were both secured in the closet. Chapter 7, The Mastermind Revealed. When detectives asked Willie why they had targeted the specific couple, the young man revealed a crucial name, Daphne Wright. He explained that Daphne was a close associate of his Uncle Bobby. According to Willie, Daphne had complained bitterly about people who owed her large sums of money, declaring that if they did not pay what they owed, she wanted them eliminated. The arrest of Bobby Guillory. In December of 2015, armed with this new information, investigators traveled to Katy, Texas, to arrest Bobby Guillory. Facing charges of capital murder, Bobby eventually chose to cooperate. He admitted his involvement, expressing deep remorse and claiming he had been driven by extreme financial desperation after losing his job. Bobby confirmed that Daphne Wright had orchestrated the entire plan, promising him a payment of $10,000 to carry out the deed. He explained that Daphne had become furious over the unpaid spiritual debt of nearly $280,000.